Welcome to another episode of the F.I.N.E podcast, where a couple of knuckle-dragging veterans unpack the world of mental health as unprofessionally and informally as possible. I'm Eric Peterson.
And I'm Brad Stosiek.
And today's episode is all about the 5 love languages. So we're going to talk about where they came from, what they are, how you can figure out what yours and your partner's are, and what our experiences with them have been. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey as we do our best to take you from being freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional to truly being fine about the 5 love languages.
Welcome to the I'm Fine podcast with your freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional hosts, Eric Peterson and Brad Stosiek.
Hey, Brad.
Hey.
I feel like it's been about a little bit.
It has been a minute.
Feels good.
It does.
I always love recording with you, man.
I do.
It's always so much fun.
I know. I wish this was like a full-time job.
I know.
That would be so great.
Yeah. And speaking of that, we are now on the hunt for sponsors. So if you are listening to this and you would like to sponsor us, because come on, why wouldn't you? Right? Please reach out to us, because we would definitely love to be able to read about some of the other amazing businesses and organizations that make up our community. But for today's episode, we wanted to talk about love languages. Now, love languages, I first came across love languages when my wife was reading the book. And when I first saw it, I thought it was bullshit. Like, I was just like, nope.
Likewise.
And immediately, like, my wife was, I don't know, like halfway through reading the book, and she was like, you should read this book. And I looked at the cover, like, I'm not fucking reading that book. Like, I immediately dismissed it, right? And then as time has gone on, and I just feel like I'm really leaning into being just an old man about things. Like, I just don't like new stuff. I just don't like it. If I don't understand it, I'm not used to it. No, it's not for me. But as time went on, and just being in a relationship and understanding what that stuff was, like I was like, fuck. Yeah, I guess I kind of agree with some of this stuff.
I mean, it's probably for the better, though. Like, honestly, because like understanding the love languages can really help a relationship like blossom. I mean,
well, yeah, because it's like the way that you interpret and give love isn't necessarily the same as other people's, like how other people interpret and give love. And when you're looking at people based, like, their interpretation and understanding of love comes from whatever their experience was, whatever their environment was growing up, whatever they dealt with and saw every day, the way, if their parents stayed together, how their parents treated each other, how, if their parents didn't stay together, how they treated their relationships, like all of that forms what you think love is. And I've seen things where it's like people that are abusive and stuff like that. Well, again, I'm not condoning that by any means, but it's like a lot of them, it seems like that's what they saw growing up. And obviously at a certain point, you're like, no, I know that that's not right. But again, that was your experience.
Yeah.
So you think that that's okay.
like that's how you show love.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you get into arguments with your partner, when you understand like love languages and how to make sure that other person feels appreciated, it helps you kind of understand a little bit more about how to talk to them and how to make sure that they understand that they're loved, because it's not as simple as I thought, I guess.
No, I thought I was like, I love you.
Right.
Like,
and that was it.
Yep.
Yeah. And then it's like when the early days of a relationship, it's just like everything is so new. And you're in the honeymoon phase. So every type of interaction is like fireworks.
Yeah.
And beautiful and loving and everything. And then you get to where we're at. Where you've been with Amanda for how long?
We've been married 11 years.
And together for
like 12.
And I've been with Ashley for like 15, 18, 20, somewhere in that general vicinity, like that many years. When you get past the honeymoon phase, I think that's when like love languages become important.
Yes.
Because we're not in the honeymoon phase anymore. Like, we're in the real world phase where you as my partner probably know who I am better than anybody else. So communication is so incredibly important to make sure that I am making sure that you know how much I care about you by listening to you and using those languages, and then you're doing the same to me, so we both feel fulfilled. So I just, as I grow, like I'm maturing, man.
What?
Like I'm reading this stuff. I'm like, man, like talking about love languages and stuff. And I like talking about it. My favorite thing now about masculinity in my age group, our age group, is like I hear guys like me having real conversations with other guys when they're having arguments with their wives, like, hey, bro, what's her love language? I'm like, that's great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you need to talk about it. So it's cool. And I do like that we're welcoming things like this into our lives so we can better understand our relationships. And whether you believe in it or not, by like taking what you want from it, it still, I think, could really improve a relationship.
Absolutely.
Right? So to get into this, I want to start off by reading our sources for this episode. So our sources are Military Family Research Institute at Purdue University, abc.net.au, the book, The 5 Love Languages, The Secret to Love That Lasts by Dr. Gary Chapman, the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, the American Psychological Association, the book, The 5 Love Languages of Children by Gary Chapman and Ross Campbell, and the book, The 5 Love Languages Military Edition by Gary Chapman and Jocelyn Green. So, Brad, can you tell me where the love languages came from and started?
Yeah, so it was the book, The 5 Love Languages, The Secret to Love That Lasts.
Mm-hmm.
It was written by, published by evangelical Christian Gary Chapman in the early 90s. So basically, it was based on trends that he saw in couples counseling in his church. So he just like saw the trends, it was a lot, and then he published the work.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where that's the book that my wife was reading. That's where all the stuff comes from. Mm-hmm. And in that book, they define what those 5 love languages are. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. The first one is words of affirmation. So words of affirmation, which is expressing love through spoken or written words of appreciation, encouragement, and gratitude. Some examples of that would be compliments, kind words, love notes, and verbal encouragement. The second one is acts of service. So demonstrating love by performing helpful tasks or actions for your partner, like cooking a meal, doing household chores, running errands, helping with projects. The third one is receiving gifts. So giving thoughtful gifts as a tangible expression of love and appreciation, like surprise presents, flowers, personalized gifts, small tokens of affection. Quality time is number 4. So spending undivided, which I think is kind of a key word there, undivided, focused time together to strengthen the bond and connections, going on dates, having meaningful conversations, enjoying activities together, spending uninterrupted time together. And the 5th is physical touch. So using physical touch to convey love and affection, hugs, kisses, holding hands, cuddling, physical closeness. So first off, what are yours and what are your wives?
Oh man. So mine, I like physical touch.
Mm-hmm.
And
said no guy ever. No thanks.
No. I will pass. Please don't
you
touch
stay
me.
over there. I'll stay.
We
over
have
there.
separate beds, actually.
But here's the thing. Every once in a while, my wife complains about me snoring. I'm like, you know what? She's gonna get fucking separate beds. Or I'll complain about her because my wife is very petite, yet somehow she has like this weird superpower when we're laying in bed where she takes over like 80% of the bed with her teeny little body. And somehow I'm just kind of like leaning on the edge. Yep. Like I'm Frodo in Lord of the Rings where he's like sleeping on the mountain.
Yes.
Just kind of like looking over. Yeah. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
No,
anyway,
no.
You were saying.
I don't like acts of service to me, but I so I guess Amanda's is acts of service.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess those two probably are the main ones that, and quality time, obviously
I was going to say my wife's love languages.
Yeah.
Fucking all of them.
I was going to say.
But that's also mine. Mine is also kind of all of them.
Minus one, but that's fine.
Minus which one?
Receiving gifts. I just think that's.
Oh, for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, though, with receiving gifts, to me, that doesn't mean that you have to show up with some big, grandiose, whatever.
Right.
Like gifts that mean the most to me are ones that are like sentimental, that are just really kind, that came from the heart, something small.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That you saw and you were just like, oh, hey, this reminded me of you, so I want to get it for you. That is how I take receiving gifts.
Right.
You know what I mean? When you put too much emphasis on the number of gifts or the size of gifts or all of those other things, then I definitely think you can fucking get into some hot water. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I think even to like small gifts, even if it's like made or whatever, you know what I mean? I still feel like, oh, I can't love you unless you bring me a gift. Like that's what it feels like to me. You know what I mean? Like, oh,
yeah.
If you didn't bring me a gift, I don't love you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's just, I think maybe it just needs to be worded better than like receiving gifts.
Yeah, it's like Darla and Little Rascals because she always wanted shit. We watched Little Rascals the other day and I realized how much of a dick Darla was in the very beginning. Because Alfalfa put his heart out there for her.
Yeah.
She dropped him like that for that little rich dude.
She did.
You know what I'm saying? And like he had to work hard to get her back. But at that point, I'm like, bro, cut your losses and move on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? With my wife, whenever we've had, not like conflict, but just I've realized and grown as a husband by paying attention to my wife's love languages. For example, like not that long ago, you know, in the morning, our morning routines vary, but sometimes, you know, my wife will wake up first and she'll get ready for work and start doing her thing. And then I'll get up afterwards. And then I would just get up and immediately start my routine. But I was the last one up and I would not make the bed because my wife was in the bedroom getting ready and then she would make the bed. And she just asked me once, you know, it'd be helpful if you could help me and make the bed when you get out of it in the morning. Old me, I feel like, would have been like dumb and angry about it for some reason.
Yes.
Been like, why are you asking me to do? But then like now, you know, middle 30s aged Eric is just like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. I can do that. If it's affected you enough that you ask me to do this because it'll help you out and give you some peace, well, by me doing that, it shows you, one, that I'm listening to you, and two, that I care enough about your time to take one thing off of your plate because that's an act of service. And then like words of affirmation, like who doesn't like to know that they're doing a good job?
Dude, I love when people tell me how awesome I am.
And just like encouraging and saying nice things, like in any relationship.
Yep.
I think in the love notes, so I don't know if I've ever said this before, but like one thing, every time I have to fly out somewhere, if I'm going to be gone overnight, I will always write just like a little note to my wife. And I'll like leave it somewhere that I know that she'll see it. Super short and sweet.
Yeah.
But like it's just something that I started doing when I was overseas. Like her and I would write letters to each other.
Yeah.
And then so like we still do that. I know she appreciates that because she framed like our vows, the vows that I wrote to her. She has them like a little frame because she likes words of affirmation. Receiving gifts because no woman likes receiving gifts. Okay, like fucking, all right. But quality time, of course, like we want to spend quality time with each other and then like physical touch, obviously, again. But, and I think it's not about figuring out, okay, you only have one love language. To me, I interpret the love languages, and this is coming from somebody who fucking still hasn't read the book, by the way. But like, for me, reading about love languages comes down to really understanding where I'm lacking.
Yeah.
And like, what my partner appreciates and what I can do to help her with those things. Because before I understood love languages, like better than I, at least like I understand them a little bit better now. Like I said, still haven't read the books, but I understand the premises behind it. But like before I read this stuff, when my wife would complain about something that I'm not doing, in my mind, I would say, well, I'm doing all of these other things. Like, if you're complaining that I didn't make the bed, I'm like, listen, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this.
Yep.
And now I can understand, like, okay. It's not saying she doesn't understand and appreciate and see those things. It's that this is her love language.
Yep.
And I have mine too. You know what I'm saying? And she reciprocates that because I like being told nice things.
Yes.
I like being encouraged. I like it when she, once in a while, she has the extra time and she meal preps for me.
Yeah.
So acts of service. When she gets me gifts for like Father's Day and she has the kids like make stuff for me. Love that shit. Quality time. I love spending quality time, obviously, with my wife, and physical touch. Like, of course, I love all of those things.
Yeah.
But again, I didn't take it verbatim as much as I just use this as a tool to help me understand and communicate better with my wife.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
I feel like that's the problem with understanding the love language. I feel like people see the love languages and they're like, oh, I'm only specifically that one.
Right.
But it's like, no, you need, like you just said, you need to express all 5. Well, for me, 4.
Right.
I'm not giving you gifts.
Don't give me anything.
God damn it. No, but like,
Like your kids give you something, you're like, this is garbage.
no, see, when you put it like
Crush
that, now I sound like a turd.
Nobody ever get Brad anything.
No, that's
ever.
not what I was saying.
Nothing ever. If you're going to give him a gift, take and throw it in the garbage where your emotions belong.
Yep.
No, I know. You shouldn't, I don't think, I agree with you. I don't think you should look at love languages so much, just be like, okay, this is mine and this is yours.
Mhm.
I use it as a tool to understand my wife and to try to communicate with her better, and to also understand that it's not that she doesn't appreciate me. It's that I'm not speaking her love language right now.
Yes.
We're speaking 2 different things.
It's,
you know?
it's weird. It's almost like it's almost speaking like a foreign language. Like you don't understand. It took me a long time to understand love language, and like a lot of fights, a lot of
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
a lot of arguing, and I think finally, like you said, turn 30. There it is. That's the answer. Just
Now
turn 30,
I'm
folks.
wise.
Now I'm wise.
You need to listen to me because I understand everything.
I understand
now.
the whole universe.
No, but it really comes down to, again, you get past that honeymoon phase and you understand, because again, like I said, one of the reasons why I would always get so triggered, or not so much triggered, but like I would get really angry when I would start fighting with my wife, because my wife would bring up something. And again, I'm like, don't you see all these other things that I'm doing?
Yes.
And again, I'm not necessarily, so going back to the love languages. So she asks me to make the bed, and I'm telling her, don't you understand how often I give you words of affirmation, how often I give you gifts, how much quality time I spend with you? But that's not what she's talking about. She's not complaining about those languages. She's complaining about acts of service. So now I'm like, oh, okay. It's because this is one area. This is how she's trying to communicate with me. And this is how she understands that I care about her and I'm listening to her and that she's being seen, So again, it just, obviously it's going to help you build a very strong relationship. And so some other reasons why these are so important. So like we just talked about, enhanced communication. Knowing your partner's love language helps you express love in a way that is most meaningful to them, improving overall communication and reducing misunderstandings. Stronger emotional connections. So speaking your partner's love language fosters a deeper emotional bond, making both partners feel more valued, appreciated, and connected. Increased relationship satisfaction. So couples who understand and speak each other's love languages report higher levels of relationship satisfaction as each partner feels loved and understood. Conflict reduction. So misunderstandings and conflicts often arise when partners don't feel loved or appreciated. Speaking your partner's love language can reduce these conflicts by ensuring both partners feel emotionally fulfilled. Resilience in tough times. So during stressful or challenging times, understanding and using each other's love languages can provide crucial emotional support and strengthen the relationship's resilience. In my mind, again, it's like when I have to leave, I don't want to leave my family. So I leave a little love note to my wife, and I know she's going to read that and she's going to appreciate it during that time. Personal growth. Learning to speak your partner's love language encourages personal growth, empathy, and a better understanding of your partner's needs and preferences. And then long-term relationship health. Consistently expressing love in ways that resonate with your partner helps maintain a healthy, loving relationship over the long term, preventing feelings of neglect or dissatisfaction. So a couple other little facts that go with this. So a study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that couples who regularly express love in their partner's preferred love language report greater relationship happiness. Couples who practice love languages are more likely to stay together and report fewer conflicts. Love languages can also apply to friendships and family relationships, enhancing overall communication and understanding. Like love languages definitely apply to friends too.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely apply to friends, because the things that my friends do for me, like I appreciate so much, and it shows me how they show their love. I have a friend who his love language is acts of service. You know, like I have something that's broken. I'll call him up like, hey man, can you help me with this? And he's like, yep. And he'll come right over and he'll help me fix something like that. I love that. I appreciate that. Another one of our friends, Kristen, she gave me a gift. She had a wooden 3D picture of Walter's head. So our mascot for Project Headspace and Timing made. And so she gave it to me out of nowhere. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like getting something like that, you're like, that means a lot to me because you put thought into this. And I appreciate getting gifts.
You know what?
Unlike some assholes.
I retract my statement impaired. Because I didn't. Wow. Maybe that's why I don't like gifts, Eric. You ever think about that? Because I can't see them, dick.
You can smell them. You can like take it and you can like shake it next to your ear. You're like, what's this? Is this a sock full of nickels? You know what I mean? You got other senses. You're like Daredevil.
So maybe I like misinterpreted the whole like receiving gift thing.
No, I think the way that you were looking at receiving gifts is the problem that I also have with gifts, which is like you shouldn't make it about gifts.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And you shouldn't make it about like, oh, I need to buy you some super expensive thing that's way above where I'm at financially just to show you I love you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that I don't agree with. You know, the idea that you have to spend like whatever they said, you have to spend X amount of months paycheck on a fucking wedding ring. I'm like, who said that?
I found mine in a Cracker Jack box.
Hell yeah, buddy. It should fit the person that you're getting it for.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much it costs unless that's what your partner's priority is. And if that's what your partner's priority is, that's their priority. You know what I mean? But I agree, not putting the focus on the gift is important. I just, like I said, whenever it comes, and I think this is just like a dad thing, because every dad, grandfather, like everything that I know, it's like when it's their birthday or when it's the holidays, they don't want any, like they want something sentimental or something that they can play with their kids or grandkids with.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, because I don't need big flashy things. Me personally, I love sentimental gifts. Like every thank you card I've ever been given, I've kept every thank you card. Whenever I've done any event, anything, it doesn't matter how big or how small. If somebody wrote me a thank you card, I kept that because that means a lot to me. And I really like that. I appreciate that. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's really important to understand love languages with your friends too. You know what I mean? And to be able to reciprocate that in the ways that they like to receive that love makes them also feel like they're understood. So super important. Brad, what did you find can happen if you do not understand your partner's love language?
Yes. So if you do not understand your partner's love languages, so it can lead to unmet needs for either partner.
For sure.
It can lead to miscommunication, sensitivity. So with that, like people become, like you were just talking about with the gifts, they become sensitive towards, and they feel like they're not
doing enough.
Yeah. So they can be, it says they can be highly sensitive to one love language, meaning they feel the most love and hurt through that form of communication. And then there is staying in abusive relationships just to continue the love language.
Well, because it's like if you are holding on because your partner gives you gifts.
Yep.
And this is something that I think everybody's familiar with, whether it's through personal experience or TVs or movies or whatever. But it's like, okay, this guy gives me gifts, so he loves me. So I have to stay with him no matter what.
Yep.
Even though he says terrible things to me, makes me feel terrible about myself, doesn't do anything else to show me that he cares, makes me do everything, doesn't spend any time with me, doesn't touch me, whatever, because he gets me really nice gifts.
Yeah.
He loves me.
Yep.
So yeah, dude, like if you don't understand your own love language, you could be screwing yourself over in your relationship.
Oh,
so yeah, that totally makes sense.
Well, it's also, I just thought of this, but like the unknown, like if you don't have any understanding of this at all, You just said that. Sorry.
No, don't be. Well, yeah, because it's like as a young man,
Yeah.
as a young man, your first relationship, your love language is physical touch, and you're just like,
buddy.
she touched me, like I love her.
You're talking real relationships?
Yes.
I thought you meant Jenny.
Oh, Jesus, that's gonna be a clip. But you know what I mean? You don't know when you're growing up, and I think it's important to teach young adults about this.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Because then you don't know what your love language is. And again, as a young man, I'm like, I didn't know what love was.
No.
I know my parents, like, and I know that they were in love. My parents, though, as far as like love languages, when I think about what I grew up in with my parents' love languages were acts of service for sure, quality time, and like some words of affirmation.
Yeah.
They weren't like super physical, nothing like that. My dad is very practical, and my mom was raised in the boondocks of the Philippines, so she never wanted shit. So like it wasn't about big gifts, it was about practical things that we needed as a family.
Sure.
And then spending quality time together, which again, as a young person to watch your parents, quality time is I think a very, very, very important thing to be able to see. So yeah, now what are some of the flaws that you found
of the theory
with all of this? Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lack of evidence, right?
Mhm.
So basically, this was just based off of Reverend Gary Chapman's interviews that he did with couples, like during his church with couple counseling. So there's a lack of evidence.
Right.
It's oversimplified. It's
Yeah.
too simple. You know what I mean? It doesn't dive deep enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on personal experience. Again, goes back to unintentionally devaluing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, there's no T there. You're right. Good call.
Mm-hmm.
And then misinterpretations of, again, not reading the love, like into the love language the right way.
Well, like we talked about misinterpretations, like if you think that, oh, I have to pick one and you pick one and then this is what I need and this is what you, because that's when my wife first taught me about love languages. That's what I thought she was trying to say. Like, okay, you have this one and I have this one.
Dude, I think I'm pretty much, I thought the same thing. I took a quiz.
Yeah.
And the one was like dominant. And I was like, all right, that's what I am.
Yeah, right.
So.
But that's just saying that that's the thing that you appreciate the most, but that's not saying that you don't also have these other, like you don't also speak these other love languages. Yep. And it's important to not just throw them out. You know what I mean? So I can understand that. I mean, the oversimplification, I'm not disagreeing with any of this stuff, but what I do think it's a really good a good kind of like foundation. Like start here. I'm not saying anything is the end all be all, but if you want to look at ways to improve your relationship, I mean, it makes sense. You know what I mean? Because like I said, I'm not putting all my eggs in this basket, but I don't know. I definitely think that there are more pros than cons, while I understand what the shortcomings still are. Being that it's based, lack of evidence was like one dude. Yeah, I understand all that too. But
I mean, that was in the 90s when he wrote this, right? So it's been 30 years.
Yeah, it was before social media.
So, I mean, there's got to be evidence now, right?
Right.
Like us, right?
Yeah.
We're evidence.
Right.
Our marriages seem to be okay. At least mine is great.
Right.
So
yeah, she's all right. Yeah, it's fine.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I mean, well, and he wrote some other books too, also ones that I have not read. But I mean, I don't know. I still think fundamentally there are definitely some pros, and I definitely got some takeaways from it.
Sure.
I don't think I've read anything and just 100% agreed with it. Maybe with the exception of like Stoicism, as far as a book of principles of which I need to build my life and character on. You know what I mean? Stoicism was one of the things that I read and I really felt the most passionate about. And everything else, just like I treat the 5 love languages, just like I treat a lot of other things that I come across. I get the positives that I can out of it. And then whatever I don't want to take, I don't. You know what I mean? So how long did it take for you and your wife to understand love languages, and how did you like first have the conversation about love languages? Did she find it first and talk to you about it?
Oh yeah, she found it first, and we actually went to a marriage retreat when we were in Okinawa, and it was brought up there as well. So I guess I kind of heard it there, but I really didn't.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool that they did that while you were in.
Yeah. But man, it took a long time to really figure out I mean, we're still working on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're still working on each other's love languages and what works for us. And
Right.
so I think it's just an ongoing, you know what I mean? I don't think it's ever going to end. I don't think I'm ever going to figure it out.
No, because again, it's just kind of like a foundation that you build the rest, like everything else on. And for me, if you use it like me, they're just tools that help me keep myself in check and help me not get angry about something that my partner said because I'm not speaking the same language as her. You know?
Can say that by understanding the love language, though, it has helped my marriage like tremendously. It's been
anything
incredible.
that helps you not fight with your wife, probably going to help your relationship, especially if it's a self-reflection thing.
Yeah.
Anything that stops you from starting a fight with your wife, not a bad thing.
No,
not a bad thing at all. And you brought up something. So we had different experiences when we were in the service.
Yeah.
So when I was National Guard. My wife was here. When you were in the Marines. So your wife went with you.
Yeah.
So how was being in the Marines, how did that affect the importance of love language for you and your wife?
So looking back while I was in, that really I didn't really think about that. I didn't understand it. And I was so like desensitized from the military that I was like, oh, love language. I tell her I love her every day.
Right.
So
that is a problem.
Love, right?
Right.
So
yeah, that is definitely a problem. I mean, especially when I was deployed, all of the love languages meant a lot to me. Like getting a care package was very, very important. Like it really affected me in a positive way. Yeah. I mean, the obviously physical touch was non-existent because I was deployed.
Was it though?
Touche, young Bradley. Touche. Quality time also affected in that I didn't get to spend any time with her. So the only time that I had with her was like on the phone or on the computer. And we had shit for internet because it's 2008 and I was in Afghanistan. So like usually it was just phone calls. Yeah. So I mean, and then words of affirmation, compliments, kind words. Like it's so easy. And I can't tell you how many times I would be in an MWR. Are you familiar with MWRs?
Yeah.
Oh, if you're listening, it's a morale, welfare, and recreation like room. The ones that I've seen overseas were like little plywood buildings, and they would have like some phones, a pool table.
Yeah, so kind of like USOs.
It's like a USO, yeah.
Okay. Yep.
So I would go into the MWR, and it would be like 8 phones with little barriers in between them, and you would just hear, I don't know, like 50% of them just fucking arguing with their partners. You know what I mean? Because it's so hard.
Yeah.
When you're gone, you don't have the ability to spend quality time, to have the physical touch with your partner, to do those acts of service. It's so much harder to do all of those things.
Yeah.
Which I think creates so many problems between couples. And I love that when you were in, they started talking about love languages. I went down to Springfield to do a training with all of the chaplains of the Illinois National Guard, I think like last year, 2 years ago, because I had provided some assistance to a National Guardsman who was like suicidal, was in a real bad spot. And the National Guard appreciated it, so they asked me to come down and do like some training and shit. So I went down there, did some training, and they asked me if I wanted to spend the whole weekend down there. And I was like, hell yeah, like I want to see what kind of training you guys are doing. And the chaplains were focusing on what can we do for National Guardsmen and their partners? Like, how can we do some things for them now? And I'm like, yeah, man, that's so important. Because when I deployed, they had the FRG, Family Readiness Group. So that was the group of people that stayed, the spouses and family members and stuff. And they would like try to come together, support each other, pass information on as far as what's going on overseas. And, so the partners had some support, I guess, but it was still, man, just deployments are difficult because you're living 2 separate lives, so it really makes the necessity of understanding love languages and finding ways around it, so much more important. What did you think about as far as after serving? Like, how did the military again affect your interpretation of love languages.
Yeah.
Desensitization, I think, is a very important one that you mentioned.
Yeah. I think afterwards it took a long time to get reaccustomed to, and I think I was just thinking that's what you were talking. I think the military established words of affirmation for me, because in the military, when someone tells you you're doing a good job, or like, hey, you get promoted or something, you know what I mean? So I think that kind of cemented like, hey, I like words of affirmation, because if I wasn't told I'm doing a good job, I was being told I was a piece of shit or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that kind of changed it too. And it took me a long time, again, after the military to kind of like get back on track and like, I guess, be humanized again. You know what I mean? It's like feel again.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put that, because again, in the military, when you're serving, it's mission first.
Yeah, always.
Mission first. Everything else takes a back seat. I get into an argument with my wife on the phone right before mission. I compartmentalize that shit because I got to focus on mission. I got to be at 100% or as close to it every time I roll outside the wire. So like, I got used to that. And then when I got out, when you're used to your experiences in the military, depending on what they are, and you come back to the civilian world and your wife is telling you, hey, I really wish you would clean the dishes when they're in the sink, you're like, again, not speaking the same love language. I'm like, do you know what I just went through for the past 9 months? Do you know what happened? Blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, whoa, 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 whoa. She's not questioning that. She's just saying that this is her love language.
Yep.
This is how she knows that you see her. And it's not saying that she discounts all those things you did. And I think that's a hard thing to understand. That was a hard thing for me to understand and wrap my mind around, because I don't know what it is. Maybe it's ego, where I just think like, okay, I did these things.
Yeah.
You should just appreciate me forever. And I should just never have to do anything again. I don't know what it is, but I had a hard time understanding that for a while, So I definitely think the military really impacted that. For me, I guess. And so I found that Gary Chapman wrote another book. He wrote the 5 Languages Military Edition, and it was co-authored by Jocelyn Green. I didn't read much about Green. It said she was a subject matter expert. I assume she's a military spouse, but I'm not sure. And this is strictly about the relationship between partners, not between those serving in the military. I want to write that book about the love languages, the 5 love languages between service members.
There would definitely be a lot more than 5, though.
Words of affirmation.
Yes.
Hey, fuckface.
Yep.
Hey, stupid.
Yep.
You're looking kind of fat. You should have another cupcake. Yep. You know what I mean? Those are words of affirmation.
Receiving
when you're in the
gifts. Can I have a cigarette? Let me get a dip.
Oh, bro. That is arguably probably one of the best gifts you can get.
Yes.
When you were like, hey, man, can I get a cigarette? Like, for sure. I was going to say I put a dead camel spider in one of my buddy's laptops and I closed it because he was terrified of spiders. That was a gift that I gave him.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Acts of service in the military are when you ask one of your fucking buddies, like, hey, you want to go get chow?
Yes.
You hungry? Let's go to the DFAC. That's an act of service. For sure. Yeah.
Or in the field.
Yep.
You got to drop a deuce.
Yep.
In a hole.
Yep.
And your buddy holds you up above said hole and you make eye contact and you're holding hands.
People in the civilian world wonder why. Guys, people that served in the military were just a little, I don't know, weird or different. When you have to do, because when you talked to me about this when we were talking about the ideas for this episode about how you witnessed that happen, I didn't bat an eye. I was like, yeah, man, I get it. You got a shit. There's no way to support it. Your battle buddy, whoever.
Dude held me up.
Hold your hands.
Yep.
And again, I've said this before, but when I mobed and I was in Fort Bragg, you would go into the bathrooms. It was like the Civil War, World War II barracks, and there would be 5 toilets on one side, 5 toilets on the other side, no dividers. No, and these toilets were made in World War II when everybody was like 120 pounds. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm in there with a bunch of infantry dudes. It's like 3 a.m. There's one guy in there. My love language, okay, is both physical touch and acts of service because I sit right next to them. And I'm like, hey, man, how are you doing today? What are you doing? What's going on in your life?
Then put your hand on his leg. Hey, buddy.
Physical touch. Other forms of physical touch, if you were serving with your service members, finding someone asleep on fire guard, choking them the fuck out. right? I once put baby powder on my hand and smacked my roommate. I'm sorry, Cummins, if you're listening. He dropped a knee into my chest after I did that. We were getting into a fight. When you live with somebody for 9 months, bro, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So yeah, and I just wish that, I wish that there was another book about those love languages.
Oh, absolutely.
And I would ask to be the co-author.
I'll say, let's write a book.
We definitely should be mostly pictures.
And written in crayon.
Not a lot of words. Written in crayon.
Well, maybe written in crayon. Depend on how many I eat. If I'm hungry or not.
All of the R's would be backwards.
Oh, absolutely they would.
But according to Gary Chapman's book, so I wanted to look at some of the differences between his book, The Love Languages Military Edition, with the original 5 love languages. So like from a contextual perspective, the military edition specifically addresses the lifestyles and demands of the military and service, especially deployments, relocations, stresses of military life. I didn't have to deal with relocations because, again, I was in the National Guard. I have to imagine that has to be such a huge amount of stress to just pick up and relocate, which is what you and Amanda did. Kind of. She went with you.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
So I had one duty station, and that was I served as my duty station in Japan. But like relocating after like boot camp was California, and then back to California for MCT, and then then I went to Virginia, and then like relocating sucks. I lived out of a sea bag for.
Oh, yeah.
Freaking ever.
Yeah. Again, and people in the military say this, being in the military teaches you how to be homeless or prepare to be homeless.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because you just get used to living out of a bag.
Yep.
And it's totally fine. Like if I go on vacation with my family and I bring my bag, when we get to our room, my wife will, understandably so, take her stuff out, put them in drawers and on hangers and whatever. I just leave everything in my bag. I'm like, I'll get it when I need it.
Yeah, it's easier that way.
Yeah, that's right. And again, I think, from the military.
Yeah.
Some other things that book offers. So it offers practical strategies for maintaining strong relationships despite the physical and emotional distances often experienced in military life. It includes tips on how to keep love alive during long separations, how to reintegrate after deployments, both super important. Before I move on, how do you think couples reintegrate after the military or after time being away? Because I think the hard thing is you hit the honeymoon phase.
I was gonna say you go through the honeymoon phase again, which
you think is a good thing. I'm not saying it's not a good thing. Actually.
Yeah.
But it's just like if you're deploying a lot, like I deployed 6 times between military, State Department, DOD, and there was some time in between, right? But like my wife and I constantly found ourselves in this roller coaster of honeymoon phase, I'm gone. Honeymoon phase, I'm gone. And so then when I finally come home and the dust settles, that's where I started having problems. We started having problems. The honeymoon phase was over. We really had a lot that we had to deal with in that point because of how often we found ourselves in the honeymoon phase because I was gone so much. You know what I mean? And so that was, and I'm sure any job that finds you having to travel a lot, is kind of like a similar thing to that. Yeah. That book, The 5 Love Languages, Military Edition, also includes additional stories, real-life stories from military couples who have successfully applied the love languages in their relationships. They offer insight and inspiration specific to the military context. They discuss the impact of PTSD, combat stress, the unique pressures of military service on relationships. It provides guidance on how to use love languages to support partners through these challenges. And it includes resources and tools specifically designed for military couples, such as tips for effective communication during deployment and advice on building a support network within the military community, which is so, so, so important, especially when you're deploying, like I said, with the FRG back in a home. So, your partner doesn't feel alone, so she still feels supported. What do you think some of the most effective communication tips are while being in the military with your spouse?
You have to remember that your spouse is not, unless they are in the military, they're not in the military. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you have to remember that you cannot talk to your wife like she's a Marine, like she's in the Army. You cannot treat them like, and that was one of the hardest things for me because that was my life for 5 years. It was drilled in my head. That's who they wanted me to be. And like, it was the time where I was like finding out who I was as a person. You know what I mean? Like 18, I joined the Marine Corps.
Right.
So it was like, I think I treated a lot, like even with the kids, like the same thing. I would take what I learned from the military and apply that to my marriage, and that is not the way to do it.
Right. Yeah, but again, because that's your whole experience.
Yeah.
And that's, it's so hard when you're just working back home, 9 to 5, 40-hour a week job. It's hard for work not to bleed into your personal life.
Yeah.
With that, when you are in the military and you're pretty much 24/7 in the military,
yep.
But you're only around your partner for like 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day, 12 hours, whatever it is. Yeah, it's really hard for that to not bleed over and to not have that same bearing in that relationship, which might not be what your partner was looking for. So yeah, I would definitely agree with that. For me, I also thought that effective communication tips while serving is just continuing, like communicating as often as you can.
Communicating in the right ways, though.
Yes,
right?
sorry.
You gotta like healthy communication. Yeah.
Because what I meant was like when I was overseas, I would do everything I could to call my wife every night.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And there were times where it would be a few days because comms would go down, whatever happened. There would be reasons, but every chance I could, I would try to call her because that was my only opportunity to talk to her. And then it also sucks because when I was deployed, if I would call my wife and she didn't answer, I would be so hurt.
Yeah.
But the thing is I didn't always get to control when I could call her and she's home managing everything, living her life. It's understandably so that something in life would come up that would make it so she couldn't come to the phone at that point in time. Yet, because that was my only opportunity to talk to her, because she wasn't able to answer, it made me feel like I didn't receive any of these love languages, right? So it would make me angry, and then I would get frustrated with her when I finally talked to her, even though again, it wasn't her fault. You know what I mean? And that was another thing that really impacted us when we were serving. So it is trying to communicate as much as I can in the right ways. And then really, I wish I would have known about the love languages when I was in.
Me too, dude. I mean, I did.
Really do.
I wish I would have paid attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, you're a victim of being a young person and you just think you know everything and so you don't pay attention to it. But very important. How else do you think stress and demands of military life can impact relationships?
I mean, just all the time, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, stress, arguing, and all the stuff. All
of the stuff.
I think my biggest one is, like I said, I talked to Amanda like she was in the military.
Yeah.
And I think that's my biggest one.
And you're just running your partner through the emotional gambit.
Yeah.
I've told this story before. I was in the MWR one night. I was talking to my wife on the phone, and then the building next to me got hit by an RPG, and she heard that. So she heard the explosion on the phone. And then there was the explosion. And then after that happened, I waited because I'm like, okay, was it just one RPG or what's happening? And then you hear the
small arms.
Yeah. And then my wife hears the small arms on the phone, small arms fire on the phone. And then she has to hear me go, I love you. I have to go by. Click. Just like that.
Oh boy.
Can you imagine? And then having to talk to her after 4 hours later when everything was done. And then I get an opportunity to call her back and she just sounds like she's been crying and running for the past 4 hours. You know what I mean? God, it puts so much stress on your partner because they don't know what you're doing. You can't tell them what you're doing most of the time. So they just have to hope that everything's just fine with no communication half of the time because you don't get to explain those types of things. So that just puts so much stress and pressure on relationships, which is why, again, I think that the military, and I'm glad that they are, it seems like they are, needs to put emphasis on taking care of service members and their partners, for sure.
Absolutely.
This is probably not a surprise, but research shows that military couples who understand each other's love languages have higher levels of relationship satisfaction. No shit.
Duh.
Again, it's just, it's beneficial to understand. So some practical tips for identifying your love language and your partner's love language. So if you don't know what yours is, and you don't know what your partner's is, here's some things you can do. One, fucking pay attention. Like, pay attention.
It's not that hard.
What does your partner really like? Like, what things do you do for your partner that really makes them happy and feel loved and appreciated? Ask them questions. Ask them which things they like and which things that they don't like. We joked earlier about physical touch.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that couples aren't being intimate, but there are some people that they don't like the public displays of affection type of thing.
Like
I understand that.
And handing. Yeah.
I understand that. I used to be more against showing a physical affection in public, because I just didn't see it growing up. And so it just felt weird to me. Because again, my parents loved each other, but they just weren't super physical with each other in front of me. So the thought of a public display of affection was kind of strange and foreign to me.
Yeah.
So I was, you know what I mean? So like, I understand that. So it's important to ask questions to understand what your partner really loves and appreciates, and ask yourself those same questions too, to figure out what you love and appreciate. Obviously, communicating, expressing gratitude, that helps your partner figure out what your love language is when you really tell them. Like, my wife has also been doing great with that, because she'll tell me when I do an act of service, she'll tell me, hey, I appreciate that you did that. So now it's like, I was using act of service because that's your love language, and you were using words of affirmation because that's my love language, right? That's how that shit works. So expressing gratitude, very important. Being very thoughtful and responsive. And making eye contact. If you can't make eye contact, then you're fucked. According to Gary Chapman. Take it out on Gary Chapman. I didn't say that.
Well, Gary.
I looked up. I was like, is Gary still married? He's still married. I was going to be like, if he was divorced, I was going to be like, fucking. He didn't say the make eye contact one. I just added that one on.
Oh, did you?
So,
did you add that
yes,
one?
I did. I added that one for you.
Thanks, buddy.
Because words of affirmation. Because of words of affirmation.
I really enjoy Chinese food. How's that for words of affirmation?
I also love Chinese food. That would be an act of service. I will make you that Chinese food.
Yeah?
As an act of service.
Oh, one egg roll.
That's a clip. That's another clip. The family at China Buffet is going to be very offended by that.
Oh, boy.
I think we did it.
Yeah.
We did it.
That was
talked
good.
about love languages.
We did.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add? Anything you want to say? Any words of affirmation? Acts of service? Anything you want to do?
You're doing a great job.
I also think you're doing a great job.
Thank you. I feel like I've come a long way.
You have come a long way.
Thanks.
Look at us.
Look at us.
Words of affirmation.
Aw.
So to sum this up, we talked about what the 5 love languages are, where they came from, how you can identify yours and your partners, and how being in the military can affect those things. We encourage you listening out there to take the love language quiz and start applying what you learn in your relationships. So thank you again for tuning in. Please feel free to share your feedback and any of your stories with us. You can reach out to us at our Facebook page, the I'm Fine podcast, or Project Headspace and Timing. You can also check us out at projectheadspaceandtiming.org under the media tab. You can find our podcast app. The 5 love languages quiz is 5lovelanguages.com. Again, those books that we talked about, the 5 love languages, The Secret to Love That Lasts by Gary Chapman, the 5 love languages military edition by Gary Chapman and Jocelyn Green, and also the 5 love languages of children by Gary Chapman. So please feel free to send in any other questions and stories that you might have. But again, thank you so much for tuning in, for listening to us. Again, words of affirmation. Whenever we hear from our listeners about how much they appreciate any episode, anything that they've heard, something that made them laugh, that helped them get through the day, oh my God, it means so much to me. I love that.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's a beautiful thing. So please continue to keep doing that. And until next time, we hope that we helped you go from being freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional to becoming fine with the 5 love languages.